Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today, and I've got my hands on Kawasaki's Z650. This is the 2020 model, and Moto Hub in Castle Hill here in Sydney have very kindly lent me this model for the day. So I've been having a bit of a hoot, riding around and just seeing how this model stacks up. Now, there's been a couple of tasteful updates to this particular model. We've got LED headlights, we've got a TFT display, and a little bit of a styling update as well to kind of update this particular model for 2020. And as you may be aware, this is the brother or sister model of the Ninja 650. So whether you're looking for the naked bike like this one, or you're looking for a fared bike in the Ninja 650, you get a very similar package with those two options. Now, obviously, this is a very Street Fighter themed machine, and I really like the styling. Kawasaki have really gone out of their way to make sure that all of the Z models, all of the newer Z models, really carry that same kind of theme to them, which is, you know, the Z400, the Z650 and the Z900. Unlike the older Z800 and Z1000s, which were a more kind of muscular, heavy 4-cylinder offering, this particular model is of course a parallel twin, a 650 parallel twin. It's a very popular engine configuration in the category because the parallel twin, it's nice and torquey, it's generally very well fueled, it's a little bit more predictable than the V-twins, which can be a little bit punchy and a little bit more aggressive on the downshifting and the engine braking. These are a very nice machine for first-time riders and for people who are just looking for an everyday ride, because they do kind of mix that quite linear and quite easy revving 4-cylinder nature with the more V-twin-like characteristics as well for a really nice overall ride. And you know, some people will say that the parallel twins are a little on the boring side. I don't find that. I think it's just a matter of really using the full potential of the engine and having a lot of fun with it. And obviously adding a little bit of a exhaust note to these bikes with an aftermarket exhaust is a great option. Now, starting at the front of the bike, you've got these 300mm petal rotors on the front. They are a nice standout feature because the petal rotors always kind of catch the eye. You've got 2 piston calipers on the front as well. You've just got a regular master cylinder, of course, and there's good power from those brakes, but not an incredible amount of bite. Very good feel, which does make them easy to manage for new riders, but you're certainly not going to be overwhelmed. And of course, it's backed up by ABS as well as a standard feature, which is a very good inclusion for new riders. You've got those LED headlights that I mentioned. It's this kind of stacked headlight, quite an aggressive headlight, a little bit more futuristic, and you know, it's got some real character to it. And you've also got this great kind of little mini screen here, which helps clean up the front end and hide the back of the display, which is a TFT display, which is a nice premium feature on this kind of style bike. Now, you're not getting ride modes or traction control, you just get ABS, but you do have Bluetooth connectivity for your phone to that TFT display in a nice kind of premium feature, as I said. Again, some real standouts to me is the styling on that front guard, very aggressive. It's a beautifully contoured bike on the bodywork, which you'll see on the front guard. You'll see in these little kind of mini fairings above the radiators, and of course with the tank. The tank itself is a beautifully contoured piece of kit on this particular bike. It's a real work of art, and that's a 15-litre tank. Moving back along the bike, you've got this really eye-catching trellis frame, which is finished in green, which just makes it jump out of the bike. And it's a real standout feature again, because Kawasaki have put so much effort into the overall styling of this bike, and it really shows in the finish quality and the attention to detail and how everything comes together. Now, you've obviously got that 650cc parallel twin engine. It's beautifully fueled. It's very nice and torquey. Kawasaki say that it's kind of fueled and tuned for torque between 3 and 6,000 RPM. I was finding at about 5,000 RPM there was beautiful torque, and you know, in the lower rev range you're getting nice easy fueling, great throttle response, a very easy bike to ride around town. However, you've still got the performance there if you want to have a bit of fun, and it's just a matter of using that throttle. And you can be quite aggressive on the throttle because it's got a very nice power delivery, and it's got a slip assist clutch, which does mean quite aggressively downshifting is not an issue. That keeps the engine braking under control and keeps everything nice and smooth. Also gives the bike quite a sporty nature, I'd say. Something that you'll be able to further take advantage of if you put an aftermarket exhaust on, so you can, you know, really knock it down through the gears and have a bit of fun with the exhaust note and of course with the bike overall. There's a very slick gearbox in this bike as well, very easy gear changes, nice reasonably light clutch action as well, light enough that I did not really even think about it at all. And it is the type of bike which you can knock it up a couple of gears and make use of the higher gears for the great fuel economy and trundle along quite, you know, quite relaxed, but you've got the torque if you do roll that throttle on. Or you can keep it on the boil a little bit more. Like I said, keep the revs above 5,000 RPM and really have some fun on this particular machine. One thing I did notice while riding the bike and getting a little bit higher in the revs is there are some vibes through those pegs. They're not too disruptive, they're not too bad. However, I did just feel them when I was getting much, much higher in the rev range. You've also got this cool minimalistic exhaust which keeps everything really low on the bike, really centralized as far as weight, and it's all out of view. So there's just kind of that exit there, which is nicely styled. It's all in stainless steel. It's a not bad looking exhaust, and I do have to say, I like that this has got a little bit of a rumble to it. A lot of the bikes these days don't have much noise to them because of all the restrictions. This has got just enough that when you turn it on, you're not feeling disappointed. Obviously, I'd love to see a custom exhaust on a bike like this, but at the end of the day, I think if you're not that concerned about the exhaust note, you might be happy with that. And of course, you're getting quite a nice engine tone as far as the intake as well, which will help give you that feeling of speed as a new rider. Now moving further back on the bike, we've got that beautiful banana style swing arm. It's nice to see most of these machines have got a much shapelier swing arm design these days, which is something that stands out to me because I remember the old box section swing arms, which are pretty ugly. That's a nice feature. It's got a single piston caliper on a 220mm rotor on the rear. You know, good little bit of power, not too much bite. Again, very manageable for new riders. You've also got quite a stubby tail, which is very much the Z styling. These bikes are very futuristic, very Street Fighter themed, and they've definitely kept that with the overall design of the bike. It does have this huge fender hanging off the back, which is a bit of a shame. It'd be nice to clean that up, but we can't complain too much because those are required by law. You've also got a cool Z style tail light, which is another standout feature, and while you don't have LED indicators, they are sportier indicators, which look pretty good all things considered. On the ergonomic side of things, one of the things I really did find jumping on this particular bike is that it's a nice compact feeling machine. It's got great vision through those mirrors. Obviously this has been designed for new riders, so that kind of vision's important. Also a nice upright seating position, but there is quite a sporty slant to the overall ergonomics. There's a nice low reach to the ground thanks to that 790mm seat height. It's very, very narrow between the legs as well, which further magnifies that easy reach to the ground. So if you're a rider who's on the shorter side and perhaps something like the MT-07 even was too high for you, maybe consider one of these. I think these are one of the lower options available, particularly in the 650cc category, and that nice narrow seat really helps that instead of working against the low seat height. You've also got the beautifully contoured tank. There's a reasonably short reach between the seat and the pegs, which does make it feel like a compact machine. I think that works to the benefit of the bike. I'm 180 centimeters, I'm about 70 kilos. To me, I fit really beautifully. I'm not sure about much larger riders, whether they'd have the same experience, but I think that part of the real appeal of this machine is that it's that really kind of sporty, real Street Fighter machine, which rather than just being a bike which has been detuned and made easy to sit upright, it's really got that sporty attitude to it, and they've maintained that. If anything, it's even sportier than, say, the MT-07 in that feel of compactness and kind of shortness of the bike, and that carries across into the handling as well. On the front end, we've got very simple controls because, as I said, there's a TFT display, but there aren't extensive electronics included on this particular bike. You've got adjustable levers, which are a nice premium feature, but apart from that, it's quite a simple machine. The forks are 41mm items. You've obviously got a monoshock in the rear as well. No adjustability on the front end, as you'd expect in this category. You've got preload adjustability on the rear. I'd probably play around with it a little bit. I found the front end very well sorted. I found the rear a little bit harsh at times, and I would be interested to see whether I could dial that out playing around with the preload. But overall, a nice system that's pretty well balanced. You don't get a heap of dive onto those brakes. Of course, the brakes aren't super bitey, so that helps there. You do also find that most of the harshness is over those really, big horrible bumps on the really terrible road surfaces you'll find. Through the twisties, of course, lifting myself up onto the pegs a little bit and locking into the bike, it was much less of a concern, and I was having an absolute hoot on this machine. So what sets the Z650 apart in the category? Well, obvious competition is the MT-07 and Suzuki SV650, with the Z650 offering a lower seat height than the MT-07, if not quite as low as the SV650, while the Z650 weighs in at 187 kilos at the curb, with only the MT-07 doing slightly better. Performance is quite similar between the machines on paper and in outright terms as well, with it being delivery and character the big difference here, which is always going to be subjective. The Z650 really stands out for the level of refinement they've tuned into that parallel twin, which is further helped by a super slick gearbox. While peak torque on the restricted model is reached a little later in the rev range compared to the competition, it's smooth all the way through. Power and torque are generated in a very linear manner in this regard, which is definitely good for rider control, and makes for a more forgiving machine to ride, particularly if your throttle actions aren't quite as fine-tuned yet. The slip and assist clutch fitted is something I personally like to see on machines, as it can help keep the clutch lever nice and light, as well as preventing rear wheel lockup on heavy engine braking, with the former a big point of note if you're doing a lot of commuting, and the latter something that you might experience as a new rider where you're not quite sure what you're doing yet. Suspension is fairly typical of this segment. The 41mm forks are non-adjustable, and the rear shock only offers preload adjustment. In comparison, the MT-07 adds rebound, but that's relatively unusual for the price point and segment. And while I'd say I found the MT-07 a little more forgiving at the rear shock, the Z650 was tested straight out of the box with no adjustment of preload to suit my weight, and there wasn't an enormous amount of difference in it anyway. Brakes aren't as powerful as the MT-07, but they do the job and suit the bike overall, with a set of pads with more bite certainly an option. And the brakes are better than those found in the SV650 in my opinion, with the SV's brakes often criticised. Interestingly, I actually found the Z650 feels like quite a compact machine, even compared to the other machines we've been talking about, and I put that down to the lower seat height, compact reach to the pegs, and lower bar placement. While still an upright ergonomic, the bars on the Z650 are lower than those on the MT-07 by quite a margin, and that's something I think really contributes to that quite different overall feel. Now the Z650 is slightly more expensive than the MT-07, with the SV650 cheaper than both. However, the Z650 includes the TFT display, which you can link up to the Kawasaki Rideology app and record rider logs, including GPS information of your rides. It's a really top-notch piece of kit and is very easy to read while riding. I'd also say the Z650 styling and finish quality is a huge standout, which is partly subjective as to whether you actually like the look of this bike, while the paint and bodywork quality is a big standout from an objective standpoint. Kawasaki have clearly invested more in this area than most of the competition, despite these bikes being mainly a beginner's machine, and that really does stand out. The tank is contoured beautifully with exceptional paint and a deep clear coat. There's minimal plastic paneling, while both headlight and taillight are LED units, and the front guard is color matched, and this is an area where the Z650 holds a clear advantage. So if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to sub, hit that notification bell, leave a comment down below if you've got any particular questions about the bike. I'll be happy to answer them. As always, stay safe out there and thanks for watching.